All right, today we're cracking open a case file on a medical mystery that, honestly, sounds completely impossible. It's called the smoking paradox.
So what if I told you that for a little while, it looked like smoking actually helped you survive a heart attack? I know, it sounds nuts, right? We all know smoking is terrible for your heart. But for decades, doctors were seeing something that just didn't make sense. Something that hinted at this wild, temporary advantage for smokers at the absolute worst moment.
And this wasn't a one-off thing. It was so consistent that it got its own name, the smoking paradox. Think about it. Doctors were treating people for heart attacks, and the smokers, the very people you'd expect to do worse, were often having better outcomes right after treatment than the non-smokers. It was a total contradiction. It just had to be explained.
So, like any good detective story, we've got to start by looking at the clues. And the first clue, well, it isn't about the heart attack itself. It's about the people who were having them.
Okay, so when researchers started digging in, they noticed something pretty big. The smokers having heart attacks, they were, on average, a lot younger than the non-smokers. And they usually didn't have as many other health issues, like diabetes or high blood pressure. Now that explains part of it, right? I mean, of course, a younger, generally healthier person is going to have a better shot at survival. But that wasn't the whole story, not even close.
So knowing the patient's age was a huge lead, for sure. But it didn't crack the case. The real smoking gun, literally in this case, was found at the scene of the crime. We're talking about what was happening inside the blocked artery. The answer was in the blood clot itself.
And this is where it all starts to make sense. See, it turns out not all blood clots are the same. The clots that smokers were forming were different. They were kind of fresh and soft and packed with this protein called fibrin. But the clots in non-smokers? Totally different story. They're usually dense, hard, full of platelets, and sometimes even hardened with calcium. You got to remember this difference. It is the absolute key to solving this thing.
So why did the type of clot matter so much? To get that, we need to hop in a time machine and go back to a very specific period in heart medicine. We call it the thrombolytic era. This is our scene of the crime, the exact time and place where this whole paradox showed up.
See, before we had all the fancy procedures we have today, the main weapon doctors had against a heart attack was a type of drug called a thrombolytic. You might have heard of them as clotbusters. We're talking about drugs like streptokinase or TPA. These were the frontline defense in every ER.
And here is the critical piece of information about how these drugs worked. They were like a highly specialized tool. They had one job and one job only: to find and dissolve fibrin. That soft stuff that we just said was packed into the smoker's clots? Yeah, that. These drugs were totally useless against those dense, hard, platelet-filled clots that were more common in non-smokers.
And boom, there it is, the aha moment. It all clicks into place, doesn't it? Smokers were forming the perfect kind of clot for the medicine of the time. The drugs worked better on them for a simple reason: the target was easier to hit. It was never that smoking was protecting them. It's just that smoking created a specific problem that, by pure chance, had the perfect solution available in that era.
And if you look at the data from back then, it's plain as day. Whether you're looking at how fast blood flow got back to the heart or even short-term survival rates, smokers consistently looked better. You can see that illusion right here on the numbers. It looked like a paradox, but really, it was just the story of the right key fitting the right lock.
But then, poof, the paradox disappeared. Just as quickly as it showed up, it was gone. The case went cold. So what happened? Well, technology happened. The entire game of treating heart attacks was about to change.
The absolute game changer was a procedure called primary percutaneous intervention, or PCI. Now that's a mouthful, but it's what most of us think of today as getting a stent. Instead of relying on a chemical drug to dissolve the clot, doctors could now just go in there mechanically with a tiny balloon and a stent and physically push the blockage out of the way.
And you can see here the difference between the two approaches is night and day. The old drug method, it only worked if the clot was made of the right stuff. This new mechanical method, it doesn't care one bit what the clot is made of. A balloon and a stent can push open a soft, fresh clot or a hard old plaque. It works on both. And just like that, the smoker's so-called advantage was completely wiped out. It was totally irrelevant.
So, there you have it. The verdict is in. Case closed. The mystery of the smoking paradox was never really about the smoke. It was all about a very specific, temporary interaction between the clot and the cure.
So, let's just recap. Why did this incredible medical mystery just disappear? Well, it really boils down to three big reasons. First,
Like we said, PCI came along and basically made the whole biology of the clot a non-issue. Second, today's treatments include really powerful antiplatelet drugs, which levels the playing field even more. And third, and this is the big one, once you take away that temporary, short-term illusion, you're left with the cold, hard truth. The long-term damage from smoking is devastating, and it becomes impossible to ignore.
And let me be 100% clear about this. The paradox was only a short-term illusion, an artifact of a specific time. The long-term reality was never, ever a mystery. When you look out over months and years, smokers do so much worse. We're talking more repeat heart attacks, more heart failure, and a higher chance of dying, period. There is no long-term paradox. There is only damage.
This quote really just nails it. The smoking paradox was never a get-out-of-jail-free card for smoking. It was a fascinating quirk of history, a drug-clot interaction artifact that only existed because of the specific medicines used in a specific era. It's just a great reminder that in science and medicine, context is everything, and what seems like a crazy paradox is often just a puzzle, waiting for us to find the final piece.